It's hard to pinpoint exactly when these proximity voice chat games started getting popular, but I kind of see it as having happened in two distinct waves. The first wave really started with Among Us and Phasmophobia back in 2020, and then there were a couple of games that did similar things, and it kind of died out after a while until it picked back up again recently with Lethal Company, Content Warning, R.E.P.O, and Peak. Side note, but it's hard to even really consider Among Us as a part of these since it isn't fully cooperative. There are two distinct teams, so it's hard to lump it in with the rest of these games, which are 100% cooperative. But Peak got me thinking, what value does proximity chat actually add to these games? The obvious answer is, well, it's kind of funny sometimes, but there has to be more than that, right? Obviously, what value is kind of subjective, but I like to use these categories to describe what fun is in games, so we're going to look at it through this lens. The most obvious category here that proximity voice chat applies to is fellowship. It allows the game to be a framework in which socialization can happen, but there are other ways that these games encourage fellowship. And while yes, voice chat is a massive part of that, how important the proximity aspect of it is really varies from game to game. There's also a little bit of expression, just from the fact that literally any human speech is expression, and some fantasy if you like role-playing. But the one that's most interesting to me here is the challenge that it adds. For proximity chat to be important, you need to make communication itself important in some way, because needing to be near someone to be able to talk to them is a small but very influential layer of challenge on top of that, which should completely reorient the way that developers design the game and the players play the game. In the beginning of this, I said it's hard to pinpoint exactly when these proximity voice chat games started getting popular. When they started getting popular, not when they started to exist. Because proximity voice chat has existed in games since long before Among Us and Phasmophobia. Looking at some open world games like DayZ and Ark Survival Evolved, any in-game voice chat for these games needs to be proximity based. It obviously wouldn't make any sense to be able to hear someone from the opposite end of the world, and anyone who is in a team with each other would need to be able to talk without having any potential enemies hearing them. In these games, since they aren't completely cooperative like the others, proximity chat doesn't add a layer of challenge to communication. It's almost necessary for any useful communication to happen at all. At the other end of the spectrum, we have Portal 2, a fully cooperative puzzle game which arguably makes communication even more important than in any of the other games, but it just has regular global voice chat. Despite how important communication is, proximity chat would never work in this game. Ignoring the fact that you're never really very far away from your teammate, communication in this game doesn't involve exchanging information like all the others do. Both players pretty much have the same information the entire time they're playing, and there's no threat of losing if communication isn't clear or fast enough. Because of this, proximity voice chat would just be kind of annoying. Imagine trying to explain to your teammate what to do and then finding out they could barely hear you because you were a little too far away. Another example where communication is important but proximity voice chat wouldn't work is in competitive games like Marvel Rivals. Obviously there's casual game modes, but even in those it is a competition. Games like this are really fast-paced, so communication also needs to be fast and clear, and messing with that as a game mechanic rather than leaving it as it is doesn't really make sense. That and the fact that in this game the enemy is other people, not the game itself, which makes it so communication needs to be under the player's control as much as possible. Looking at games like R.E.P.O, Lethal Company, and Content Warning, proximity chat completely influences the way you play the game. Some players can go further ahead and then go back to tell the rest of the team where enemies are on the stage or what big valuables they might need to work together to get. If the whole team stays together, they could miss out on important information or risk getting wiped by a strong enemy, but if they all split up, they're still missing out on information and risking getting picked off one by one. This is why proximity chat works in these games specifically, but wouldn't work in every game with voice chat. So that's proximity chat as a layer of challenge over communication, but communication isn't always the only thing that voice chat is used for in these games. In a lot of the examples, talking can be used as a way to interact with the game itself, not just the other players. So going back to the main question of this video, do these modern games like Lethal Company, Content Warning, R.E.P.O, and Peak really need proximity voice chat? The two things they all share in common is that 1, proximity voice chat can make for some funny situations, and 2, proximity voice chat can increase the game's challenge in situations where clear communication might be necessary. So just because I say a game doesn't need proximity voice chat doesn't mean I'm saying that it shouldn't have it. At this point, we have to look at all the games individually. Generally, with game mechanics, I consider them a gimmick if they either barely or don't at all tie into the game's other mechanics. So that's the logic we'll use here as well. Starting with Lethal Company, there's some debate on this, but from what I can gather, there's only actually one enemy in the game that can hear, and that's the eyeless dogs. It's not just your voice that they can hear, they also hear your footsteps and when you drop items. But with how large and maze-like the maps are, the use of walkie-talkies, and the dynamic of having one person stay at the ship for backup, it has a pretty big effect on communication. So I'll say that Lethal Company does need its proximity voice chat, but doesn't quite use it well enough as a game mechanic. This could of course be fixed by doing things like adding more enemies that are reliant on sound, but suggesting specific changes isn't really something I'm here to do. Content warning is in pretty much the exact same boat as Lethal Company. There's some debate, but I can only find evidence of one monster that can actually hear you, so they should probably add more. R.E.P.O does a little bit better in that aspect, where pretty much all of the monsters can hear you, but there's only really one that focuses on it as its main mechanic, so it still feels a little isolated. That, along with the fact that it's much easier to find your way around in R.E.P.O since there's a map, makes verbal communication a little less important than in Lethal Company, so it's sort of in the opposite position, where it uses it as a game mechanic pretty well, but it's not as relevant to the communication aspect. Peak doesn't need it at all. The in-game voice chat is entirely for communication and doesn't tie into any of the game's mechanics, and communication isn't even really super important like it is in most of the other examples. So it pretty much only exists in the game for the sake of having a funny moment when you hear your friend screaming as they fall off a cliff. But again, I'm not saying any game would be better without proximity voice chat, because in all of them you always have a choice. It's impossible to force a player to use your in-game voice chat because they could just go in a Discord call instead. As has been the conclusion to a few of these videos now, it doesn't really matter because you can literally do whatever you want. But it's still fun to talk about. If you agree and can think of any other games that use voice chat in a cool way, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.